It's a pleasure to have you back at the International Environment House and online. The Geneva Environment Network and the Geneva Climate Change Consultation Group, which is known as GECO, have the pleasure to welcome you today to the traditional information sharing session on activities and events related to the environment taking place during the Human Rights Council that we host ahead of each session of the Council. We are focusing today on the 60th session, which will kick off in less than 3 weeks at the Palais des Nations. The organizational meeting is already taking place next week on Monday. This is why we are having the session this week. For those who are new to this portfolio, and we have seen that in the room, we have a few new faces here in International Geneva. Let me bring to your attention that the Geneva Environment Network publishes for each session of the Council a webpage that summarizes the environmental agenda of the related session. My colleague Harvey Parafina will present you that page more in details later. In this information sharing session, we discuss and share information on planned environment-related activities, as I mentioned, at and around the Council, such as events, publications, exhibitions, and exchange on possible synergies. And all this information feeds that Gen page that I have mentioned and that Harvey will present later. There is also a submission form to submit information directly on the website, and the link is being shared on the chat for who has joined us online. We traditionally invite the GECO to co-organize these info sessions for the June session of the Council, as that session is particularly important, has an important focus on climate change related issues. But we have invited them back to organize this session with us because climate will also be high on the agenda of this September session. So to co-welcome you, we are joined by the focal point for the GECO, Ira Gibson, who is a program officer for climate at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung Geneva office. So with that, dear Ira, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Diana, and good morning and welcome everyone to this info sharing session on environment and human rights. This morning, it's a pleasure to really hold this event together with the Geneva Environment Network and to welcome you on behalf of GECO, the Geneva Climate Change Consultation Group, as just mentioned by Diana. So it's great to see many of you online, but also in the room at the Geneva Environment House. And please bear with me that today I can't be unfortunately with you in person, but I'm really happy to say a few words on behalf of GECO and in view of the next council session, which I also did in the past, particularly in view of the June session, where we have, as said, the focus on climate change as the usual main environmental theme. Yeah, but this is September session will be particularly relevant also for climate change related issues, and therefore also for GECO. And as most of you know, GECO is a group of more than 30 CSOs working in Geneva on the nexus of human rights and climate change for many years now. The aim is really to share views and updates among us about the work of the human rights bodies here in Geneva with regards to climate change related issues, but also to strengthen the attention within the human rights bodies and upcoming topics we think are relevant to monitor and push in general for stronger action on human rights and climate change, and of course to contribute through joint initiatives. So one of the strengths of GECO, I would say, is really the diversity of different members from classical human rights organizations, faith-based organizations, indigenous peoples organizations, with which we can provide valuable input. And for FES, the organization I work with, the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and as facilitator of the GECO groups, we really provide the space for exchange to hold those meetings, but also try to support where useful and bring those discussions happening here in Geneva back to the national level also, not only to Germany, where our organization is based, FES, but also to our country offices in the regions and vice versa by bringing progressive civil society voices and trade union voices from the ground to the multilateral level to promote human rights, also in relation to climate change. So this is also something GECO is very interested in to connect those partners from the field with stakeholders here in Geneva, ensure that their voices are heard. And as said, not only for the June session where the main focus is climate, the GECO group, we meet all year round to look at human rights and climate change related issues. And we're trying to organize discussions at the sidelines before, during, or after the council, like, for example, the Geneva climate rights talks to address certain topics, but also have other initiatives by individual members or in cooperation with others, like, for example, the Geneva dialogues on human rights and climate change happening also in September. So I'm really interested also to hear from our other panelists what's at stake at this session, and to hear from you here in the room, to hear about your activities, what you have planned in terms of discussions and other events. So really looking forward to this discussion here today. And with that, I would like to thank the Geneva Environment Network and hand over to Diana. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Ira, for being here with us. So let's now move on with the agenda. So to introduce you to the environmental agenda of the Council and what has happened since the last session, which was not that far ago. We are joined by Benjamin Schachter, who is leading the Environment and Climate Change team at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So for those who are new to Geneva, this is really a person that you need to meet and follow. So with that, Benjamin, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind words, and thank you to Geneva Environment Network and GECO for sponsoring this event and inviting OHCHR to join. It's always a pleasure to be here and super useful to have these conversations. So I do want to speak a bit towards what's happened since we last had one of these Geneva Environment Network briefings before HRC59. And even though that wasn't that long ago, calendar-wise, it was an eternity ago on the environmental and human rights development timeframe. So, I mean, first of all, at HRC59 itself, and I'll miss things. You know, I won't be able to cover everything in the interest of time, but we did have a new resolution on climate finance adopted. That was a very long series of informals and difficult discussions, ultimately leading an adoption of the resolution by consensus. But there were efforts to integrate fossil fuel language, drawing directly from COP decisions. That unfortunately, I think, you know, that language wasn't ultimately able to be included in the interest of consensus, and we do still have challenges in both the climate space and in the council, and talking about, you know, the root causes of climate change and the need to phase out fossil fuels. So just flagging that discussion, as I'm sure it will be one that continues at COP30, and one that's important to all of us working on human rights and climate change. We also had the panel discussion on human rights and just transition. And then we had the 62nd meeting of the subsidiary bodies to the UNFCCC, which is the major preparatory meeting for the Conference of the Parties to the UNFCCC, which will take place in Belém this November. Some of the major agenda items with human rights elements that were being discussed and largely forwarded to the COP, with negotiations needing to continue, included the Gender Action Plan, the Just Transition Work Program, the global stocktake, loss and damage, the global goal on adaptation. And I think we're seeing increasingly difficult, unfortunately, discussions in the context of the climate negotiations with respect to human rights. The hope that I have is that the next couple of things I'm going to reference may help. There's also a line of thinking that could lead one to draw the opposite conclusion, right? Depending on how states respond to the recent advisory opinions of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and the International Court of Justice. What I will say is that both of those decisions very clearly and unequivocally affirmed that states have human rights obligations with respect to climate change. They were ambitious in scope and in outlining those human rights obligations. The ICJ advisory opinion, in addition to addressing obligations related to climate change, looking at the full spectrum of legal obligations under customary international law, under human rights law, under environmental law, didn't stop with climate change. They talked about the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. They talked about a customary obligation to prevent environmental harm. And I think those legal conclusions, although not in a legally binding opinion of the International Court of Justice, should inform the upcoming negotiations and the discussions here at the Human Rights Council, which I will come to in just one more moment after I want to flag the plastic negotiations, which took place in Geneva and concluded, was it a little over a week and a half ago? And it concluded, unfortunately, without an ambitious agreement to limit and end plastic pollution as a result of a number of areas on which states remain fairly far apart, including the reduction of plastic production, which is absolutely fundamental to the end of plastic pollution, the way and whether or not really to address at all chemicals of concern in the context of plastics, which is essential, again, to addressing plastic pollution and its impacts on the human rights to health and a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, among others. So those negotiations had some positive elements, including the introduction by Ecuador and a number of other states of a conference room paper to propose human rights language for both the preamble and the principles of the text that was being discussed. And that language was integrated to an extent in the latest iterations of text proposed by the chair. However, the negotiations concluded without an agreement on how they will continue or on what basis in terms of potential textual basis they would continue. So we are, I think, all waiting with anticipation for further developments with respect to the next steps after those negotiations were adjourned until a later date. And hopefully they will move forward, as we, from a human rights perspective, badly need action taken to stop plastic pollution. So then moving on to this session, well, actually, before I move on to this session of the council, the other thing I wanted to flag is that the work of the council and its special procedures mechanisms are featured heavily in these various discussions, as well as in the advisory opinion of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and the International Court of Justice on climate change. And that is an important part of the work that we do and that we want all of us to be working on together, right? Which is to promote coherence across these different legal regimes. And I think the AOs in particular are a really useful example of how important that coherence is, and of you know, of the nexus of environmental law and human rights law being addressed in a way that can advance a better future for all of us if the guidance provided in those advisory opinions is followed. So at this session of the Council, I think we'll be hearing from some of my colleagues working with various special procedures mandates, and obviously from all of you as well with respect to your own updates. So I will primarily focus on maybe introducing a couple of the issues, but not go into particular depth on them. There is an interactive dialogue on the Secretary General's report on human rights and just transition. That will be on September 17th from 10 to, well, in theory, and if the Council runs on time, it would be from 10 to 12. As those of you who've been to a few Council sessions know, sometimes interactive dialogues are moved and don't always take place when they're scheduled. But that's what it's scheduled for now. And we hope that many of you will be able to join us and to participate in that interactive dialogue. The report itself should be available a minimum of 2 weeks in advance. It has been submitted and is currently awaiting editing. Once there's an advanced edited version, we will make that available. And as I mentioned, that should be a minimum of 2 weeks in advance of the session. There will be a number of events. The SR on toxics is here, the SR on water and sanitation. The expert mechanism on the right to development is presenting a report on climate change. There's also a half-day discussion on Indigenous peoples, which will focus on just transition. So just transition is a recurring theme at this session of the Council, and it's also a critical priority for the COP30 negotiations. So we'll be doing our best to make those links in the context of the negotiations as well. And the last thing I'll mention is that the Dominican Republic will be or is planning to table a resolution on sea level rise. And this resolution obviously will relate to climate change and a number of other issues, and something that those of you interested in this area can follow in terms of the informals that will be scheduled. And you can find all of that information on the GEN website usually, but also on SCED, which is the app that the Human Rights Council uses. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for these updates. We'll now focus on activities related to the environment by UN Special Rapporteurs, and start our tour of these Special Rapporteurs with Nuria Jepson-Campana, who is supporting the mandate of the UN Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights, Marcos Orellana. So Nuria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diana. I'm happy to be here today. Thanks everyone for coming. So the Special Rapporteur on Toxics is presenting at the September session. That mandate always presents in September. He will be presenting, I'll just get into what his activities will be at the September session. He'll be presenting his thematic report for the year, and his thematic report this year is on access to justice and effective remedies in toxics cases. It's already published on his webpage, so take a look at it. But very briefly, I'll say that it's on the particularities of toxics, of toxic harm in relation to litigation, and it looks at specifically barriers that victims of toxic contamination face in their struggle in seeking access to justice and effective remedies for the harm. It also looks at good practices. It looks at state practices that are in some ways innovative in trying to combat barriers and combat impunity for justice for toxic cases. And most importantly, it's a very practical report. So it has 24 guidelines that the Special Rapporteur encourages states and businesses to adopt and to follow in order to enable and ensure justice and effective remedies in the context of toxics. So that's his annual thematic report for the HRC. He's also presenting 2 more reports. So within the reporting period, he went to Samoa and he went to the Dominican Republic, and so he'll be presenting 2 country visit reports on those visits. His interactive dialogue is scheduled presently for 2 days, which is a little bit odd. So it's the afternoon of the 15th of September, and then it will continue from noon on the 16th of September for an hour. This scheduling continues to be a bit odd, whereby his side event is then scheduled for 1 p.m. So directly when his interactive dialogue finishes, he'll proceed to his side event. That's the schedule as it stands now. Things could change. Things could change essentially, but that's the timing that we have for the moment. So his side event is presently scheduled for the 16th of September. And for those who don't know, the side event is mainly to dig deeper and to present the thematic report. So looking with other experts, but of course with the Special Rapporteur being the main presenter at access to justice and effective remedies for toxic cases. Since we're still planning it, I don't have that much to say about it at the moment, but to be continued. And then maybe our Gen colleagues would want to say more about it, but the Special Rapporteur participates in these what are called toxic-free talks every year. And these are talks on topical issues relating to toxics. And those, I believe, are scheduled for the 17th of September. So those are the main activities for the Special Rapporteur at the September session at HRC60. Happy for any questions that anyone has. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Nuria. And indeed, everything, also the Geneva Toxic-Free Talks will take place at Palais des Nations. So everything here will take place there. Another Special Rapporteur also reporting to this session with an important report for the environmental community is the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights to water and sanitation. And we are joined online by Daniela Chavez, who is part of the team supporting the Special Rapporteur, to update us on what the Special Rapporteur will be presenting and what he will be engaging with at this session. Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diana, and good morning. It is a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Daniela Chavez, and I support the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation, as Diana mentioned. Many thanks for the opportunity to share with you about his activities during the Human Rights Council. And I'll just give a very brief note on his mandate. The Special Rapporteur, Mr. Pedro Arrojo Agudo, was appointed by the Human Rights Council on 2020. So this is already his 5th year as a mandate holder. And during his mandate, he has advocated for a more participatory approach to water governance, including in the international sphere, such as at the UN Water Conference. He has also called for recognition of water as a common good rather than economic input. And he has paid particular attention to the nexus of water and other fundamental rights, such as the right to environment, the right to food, and in his most recent report, The Right to Sustainable Energy. And this is the subject of his presentation to the Human Rights Council. This will take place on September 15 at 3 p.m., where he will hold an interactive dialogue. And this report highlights the critical challenges at the intersection of water and energy, emphasizing that addressing this nexus is essential to advance the full realization of human rights. And it also underscores the disconnect between the relatively low levels of energy production and the water required to guarantee basic human rights. And the disconnect with the vast quantities consumed by large consumers, such as industrial activities. It also sheds light on how expanding industries are outpacing the capacity of sustainable energy production and water abstraction, and placing increased pressure on natural systems. During his interactive dialogue, he will also present his report of his main findings and recommendations stemming from his country visit to Guinea-Bissau earlier in this year. So beside the presentation of his reports, he will also conduct a side event on September 16 at 9 a.m. with the objective of introducing the report to the public and creating a platform for discussing this nexus between water and energy. He aims to call for rethinking how water and energy systems are designed and governed, and it seeks to raise critical questions such as whether access to energy should be formally recognized as a human right, and to spotlight key elements required to advance the democratic governance of both water and energy. So I look forward to addressing any questions you may have, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for joining us today. So I was thanking Daniela for joining us today, for who is online. So let's now is going to be particularly busy. We have also activities that are going to take place ahead of a few days before the week before the council starts, and we have colleagues here who will update you on that. But before we start, I wanted to mention, for who has joined us online, if you want to take the floor to present something, please raise your hand or write in the chat before we give you the floor. Maybe we could start with what is happening the week before the council starts, and Benjamin touched a little bit on it, so did Ira. And I'm looking here at the Marshall Islands. If you want to say a few things on the dialogues, on the climate change dialogues of the happening the week before the council starts, great, you have the floor. If you could introduce yourself also, for who is that, who doesn't know you yet. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. Alison Conway here with the Marshall Islands. Really good to see everyone. Yeah, happy to. I confess, I am also catching up. My understanding is that we'll be going ahead with Geneva Dialogues, and the Marshall Islands is very pleased to co-host with a focus on the recent advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, which of course is absolutely huge, as we've just heard. So further information will be coming around, but we really hope to be able to use that session to reflect together both on the advisory opinion and how we can reflect the human rights legal implications of that, and make sure we're kind of moving forward together. And also colleagues in CL have been leading on that, and I know Francesca will be also back in Geneva shortly and able to send more information around, but we're very much hoping to be able to work together. And actually, while I have the floor, I wondered if it was just worth us giving a little minute on the events on HRC 59. I'm conscious it's the first time some of us have spent time together since what was quite a dramatic denouement to the resolution. I don't know if that would be helpful. I just think it strikes me that perhaps the ambassador would want it to be widely known that she was really quite content with the language that had been secured through some quite detailed and challenging discussions, and in the end, the oral revision that was provided by the pen holders to the climate change resolution, the Marshall Islands really felt that it had moved forward quite substantially, the content, in terms of getting a reference within a UN document for the first time, really in quite a while, to the list of measures that had been agreed in the global stocktake, in terms of including both removing fossil fuel subsidies and the phase out of fossil fuels within energy systems. So really happy to talk more about that offline, but I'm conscious that because of the timing and because the session wrapped up quickly, we didn't get much chance to talk to our colleagues about how that had gone, but the ambassador really felt quite content that the language that had been secured had moved things forward sufficiently. So really happy to offline a chat with anyone about that, but I feel very conscious there's lots of people that we've not spoken to about it, and I'm really happy to do so. Thanks.
Indeed, because this session generally focuses more on preparations for the upcoming session of the next session. But so the dialogues, for those who don't know, the date is the 3rd of September. It's taking place at Palais des Nations from 3 p.m. And it will be an excellent occasion to also indeed address this point. It's true that today, Benjamin brought a lot of things have happened, even though not many weeks have passed in between the two sessions. And it was important that Benjamin highlighted some of the important steps that were secured in other places recently. Do you want to react to that, Benjamin? You are also co-organizer of the dialogues with us. A few words before we move on with the tour de table.
Sure. Thank you. So, I mean, the dialogues on the 3rd will be, I think, a great opportunity to further unpack some of the language and implications of the advisory opinions, as well as think about next steps in terms of supporting their implementation. And also just to say, I think with respect to HRC59 negotiations, I'm glad to hear that the compromise reached is something that was, obviously it was suitable to member states because it was adopted by consensus. But I think that discussion will continue, and it will continue at COP30. I'm sure as well, with regard to the need to talk more explicitly and clearly about the transition away from fossil fuels that was committed to in the global stocktake decision. So yeah, I think we look forward to seeing you at the Geneva Dialogues. That's an annual tradition, and this edition should be very exciting because of the subject matter we have to work with this year.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. I see that online, Liana from the Dominican Republic has requested the floor. So while I let you figure on how to put on the camera, and no, you're already there. So maybe I give her the floor, and then we come back to the room, and I kindly ask Yves maybe to come around the table to update us on the Toxify talks. So Liana, let me put you on the panel so that you can update us on the resolution that your country is preparing. It has also been mentioned by colleagues. You have the floor. I'll let you also introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azizia. I'm Villana Pavon from the Permanent Mission of the Dominican Republic. And we're very grateful for the invitation to this meeting, which is most useful in preparation for the upcoming session. Well, the Dominican Republic has the honor to inform us, Mr. Benjamin mentioned, that we are planning to present a resolution on sea level rise and human rights jointly with Malta. We're also waiting for confirmation from other countries that will probably join us. And we are fully aware that we're facing a real and urgent challenge that is already transforming the lives of millions of people. And our proposal seeks to place the crisis at the very heart of the human rights agenda. for when the sea advances is not only land we lost, also we lose our fundamental rights and their risk. So thank you very, very much for this meeting again, and we're looking forward for a successful resolution.
Thank you very much, Liana. So we continue to the table. I have a few people who have requested the floor online, but maybe Eve, I give you the floor because I need to check. Thank you. And please introduce yourself because we have some new faces who have joined Geneva recently. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you for holding this information sharing event, which is always so crucial before we have the Human Rights Council session. So my name is Yves Lador, and I represent Earth Justice at the UN in Geneva. First, perhaps to follow up on what we've just heard about the Geneva dialogues, is to say also that before the Human Rights Council session, just the day before, the Center for International Environmental Law is also organizing a film screening on climate issues. I'm sure they will be able to circulate shortly some information about that. I don't even know myself the title of the film, so sorry, I can't give you more details, but I know that there will be a film screening. And there will be also some meetings with a number of activists coming from the field, following some of the environmental litigations which are happening now in Switzerland, and that could be a very interesting opportunity to see how these things are being developed. That's for the climate change aspect, which usually is only limited to June, but now is extending to the other Human Rights Council session, like the September one, and I'm sure we're going to also have some climate issues at the March session. But let me turn now to the other big issue that we have normally in September on the side to water, which is the question of toxics and human rights. And as Maria has very well presented, with the Special Rapporteur Marcos Orellana, 4 talks will be organized, and that will be on the 17th. So 17th will be the big day on the question of toxics, to go beyond and to continue the discussion that will have started at the interactive dialogue. We will have 4 talks, as I said, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, probably in the H building. So one will be the continuation of the discussion that the Special Rapporteur will have presented at his side event. So just to be clear, the side events are official events which have been requested, for example, by NGOs like us, or a number of us who are in the room or online, by states or intergovernmental organizations. They are on the program. The talks are not on the program. They're something which is organized thanks to the Geneva Environment Network, who are really central in this, and in collaboration with the Special Rapporteur and a number of NGOs, including us. And so, as it's these guidelines which are proposed by the Special Rapporteur on access to justice in the context of toxics, probably we do think that it is interesting to continue what will have started in his own side event, and some of the developments we will hear during the interactive dialogues. We'd like to focus a bit more on some of the tools that have been used in order to have effective remedies in the field of toxics. There are some interesting examples to show. There are also, unfortunately, a number of failures. So it's something we really have to devote some thinking to. So we'll have this as the first talk on the guidelines and tools for effective remedies against toxic harm. The second discussion will also relate directly to the work that has been done by the Special Rapporteur, and it's the question of the country visits. How do you tackle toxics and human rights issues on the ground? And so we will have an opportunity to review all of the, I mean, not all, but a number of the country visits the Special Rapporteur has done, and to see what did it change. What is the impact of such a visit? What does it bring to the country or to the people who are concerned in the field? And so that's like a feedback from experience directly coming from the ground. In the afternoon, 2 issues. One will be focusing on the corporate responsibilities facing toxics. Of course, corporates or corporation, generally speaking, are extremely important actors in this field. They have a lot to do to improve the situation or avoid failures and human rights violation. Some elements have been developed in this field, specifically to the toxic aspects. So it'll be interesting to have a focus on this. And then the fourth discussion will be what are the challenges ahead. This because this will be the last presentation of the current mandate holder, Professor Marcos Orellana. He's ending his mandate in the first part of next year, which means he will not be presenting any annual report to the Human Rights Council, and his very last presentation will be in October for his report on military activities and their impacts and toxics. So on that particular aspect, we will be having a side event on our side still on the 17th at 2 o'clock. We hope 2 o'clock. We have requested the slot for 2 o'clock. I should be more precise. I'm hopeful we will have it, otherwise it's going to be very complicated. But that's precisely to have a discussion with him on his report to the UNGA on the toxic impact of military activities. And it's a particularly important issue here in Geneva with all of the organizations working in the field of international humanitarian law. So we hope to have a discussion with a number of them at this moment. And I'll finish by saying that the Permanent Mission of Chile is also organizing a side event, still with a special rapporteur, on protecting human rights in the face of ocean pollution. And this is a follow-up of UNOC 3, the UN conference on oceans, and specifically focusing on the access to justice and for a toxic-free future. So what does the guidelines which are proposed bring to the question of ocean pollution, which is, of course, unfortunately, a huge issue. And just perhaps to end on this, it will be for all of us a new experience in September, because we will not be in room 20. We're supposed to be in the assembly hall, if I'm correct. We're supposed to move. That's at least that's the plans. That's what's being announced. So, for example, the meeting of the Permanent Mission of Chile is announced in room 7. So it will be a totally different setup for all of us to see exactly how it works. We hope it will work. We've been so used of the room 20 and all the different rooms around and going from that building to the H building. So for the toxic-free talks, they will normally still be in the H building, slightly longer, but the distance is still quite feasible within the UN compound. So that's what we have on our side.
Thank you very much, Yves. And you have also mentioned the events organized by other partners. Some of them have actually joined us online, so I will give them the floor soon. And we'll start by FIAN International. We have Sibyl online. Sibyl, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Diana, for giving me the floor. Thank you very much for organizing this information sharing event. I hope you can hear me well. Sorry for not being there in person. I just quickly want to inform about the side event FIAN is co-organizing with SETIM in the upcoming session. It will be on UNDROP, on the Declaration of the Rights of Peasants and Other People Working in Rural Areas, and speak on the potential the declaration has to strengthen rural people's rights and also food sovereignty. FIAN International is a human rights organization promoting the right to food and food sovereignty specifically. We invited for the panel Carlos Duarte, the current chair rapporteur of the working group on the rights of peasants and other people working in rural areas, to share key insights and recommendations from the current report, which is on trends and challenges for the rights holder of UNDROP. And we also will have some representative of Fisher people and indigenous people from Panama who will share about the challenges they currently experience in the context of climate change, but also due to some of the false solution to climate change, some conservation initiatives and the blue economy. And we want to share also good examples, states who have started efforts implementing the declaration in their national legal frameworks, and also court who have referred to the declaration to strengthen the rights of rural people. Yeah, I'll leave it there with this short info. We requested the slot on September 18 at 2 p.m. But as all of you, we're also waiting for approval, and we will keep you updated. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sibyl. We have heard the week of 15th September is definitely very busy. Next on our list is Budi from Franciscus International. Let's hear from you, Budi. Sorry, I'm trying to get you here. Put you on stage to update us on what Franciscus International is planning at this session of the Council. You have the floor.
So thank you very much, Diana. Thank you for organizing this meeting. And I'm also sorry that I cannot come to the meeting personally. And just to continue on the sharing from other colleagues, indeed, that this session will also be very important for us to continue the discussion on climate change. Our focus is particularly to follow up on the discussion on just transition and human rights in the light of the report of the Secretary General that will be presented on the 17th, as Ben mentioned. So for that occasion, we request for a side event to be organized on the 18th as well, from 1 to 2. So everyone is also asking the same time slot as us, in which we will discuss about the just transition and climate change as a kind of continuations of the discussion that took place in the June session. And in this side event, we are happy to get the confirmations from Ben to speak to us about the report, as well as we will have a partner from Brazil who's been working on the issue of the impact of the so-called just transitions to the indigenous communities, especially those who are impacted by the extractivism sector. And we will also provide information regarding our survey together with the Lutheran World Federations on the issue of just transition and human rights from the perspective of faith-based organization. And we are expecting as well to have the Special Rapporteur on climate change to either be present in person or give a message. We contact her, but we are waiting for the confirmations. And apart from that, in the light also of the COP30, Franciscan International with some other faith-based organizations, especially the Catholic organizations, we are going to organize a side event with the title COP30 Human Rights and Call from the Global South Catholics, in the light of the message of the three Catholic bishop conferences. That's very specific terminology in the Catholic network, in which there is a strong message coming from the Global South Catholics on the importance of human rights as part of the discussions in COP30. So we will organize the event also on the 18th in the afternoon. We are requesting from 2 to 3, but let's see if we can get the slot. And we are also thinking of inviting the Permanent Missions of the Holy See as one of the panelists, as well as Permanent Mission of Brazil, but it's still yet to be confirmed. So those are the two key side events that we organize and co-organize. And we will also try to get the slot in terms of the oral statements on relevant issues on climate change. So thank you very much, and back to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Budi. You were cutting a little bit with the sound, but all the info you have shared will be available on the webpage that we have created for the Council. Next on my list here for taking the floor is Ulysses from the International Service for Human Rights that I'm now putting on stage. And I kindly ask, I have sent a note to the Permanent Mission of Chile. Maybe if you want to take the floor next to present your side event, you are welcome to do so. So Ulysses, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you so much, colleagues. Apologies, I cannot be there. But also in the spirit of sharing, we want to share that we are organizing a side event during the week of the 22nd of September. We asked for the 24th, and as others have shared, we are also waiting for the confirmation. It's going to be on documentation of attacks against women, indigenous, and environmental human rights defenders. This is in the context of an advocacy week that ISHR with other organizations organizes. And this year we will have representatives of 12 different countries and women from all these countries working on issues related to right to land, indigenous peoples, and environment, as I mentioned. More information will come as soon as we have that confirmation. And I think that many of you are also receiving our alerts. Every session we send previous to the Human Rights Council session an alert with all the thematic issues that are at stake during the Human Rights Council. So you will find this information also there. I also want to share that before the Council, ISHR and Amnesty International is organizing its annual pledging event with the candidates and the states who are looking for a seat at the Human Rights Council for next year, for the next elections. And this is going to be on the 4th of September. And the idea here is to understand a little bit of the vision of all the candidates and to inquire on different issues. And we are still collecting for some questions. So if you would like to also send a question on issues related to environment, climate, or any other topic, you can find information in our website. As I mentioned, it's the 4th of September from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Geneva time. And it's going to be an online event. And I also want to mention that we appreciate also Marshall Islands' explanation. I think that they mentioned we haven't had the chance to discuss in this kind of format. And we appreciate the efforts that they did during the negotiations of the resolution on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulises. So continuing with who is online, as I don't see anybody raising their hand here in the room. Next, I will give the floor to the Permanent Mission of Chile. And we are joined by Maria Gonzalez. Maria, you can now open camera and speak. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Diana. And just very quickly, like Steve said before, on the big day of toxics during the Geneva Toxic Free Talks, along with the Geneva Environment Network, IUCN, and CIL, we are organizing the side event Protecting Human Rights in the Face of Ocean Pollution, Access to Justice, and a Toxic-Free Future. And this is an important subject for Chile, as the protection of the oceans is at the heart of our priorities, of course. The event is going to have the participation of Special Rapporteur Marcos Orellana and also the Chilean expert on oceans and toxics, Professor Cristian Laborda. So we're very, very excited about this event. And we believe it's going to be a great opportunity to strengthen dialogue on accountability and remedies. So we warmly invite all delegations and stakeholders to join us on the 17th at 1 p.m. on room 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this update. I have two more people to whom I would like to give the floor online. It's to speak about events that are not directly taking place during the council, but one in parallel to the council, and then another one just back to back. But it's all related, of course, to what we are discussing here. But before I give them the floor, I would like to ask Frédéric Bourg, who is supporting the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on climate change, if she wants to take the floor. The Special Rapporteur is not reporting to this session of the Council, but we have mentioned her many times this morning. So Frédéric, just let you add even 30 seconds of words here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for giving me the floor. This is Frédéric Bourg, supporting the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on climate change. A lot of events were mentioned this morning by organizers. So, as you rightly said, Diana, the Special Rapporteur won't be taking part in the session per se, but she will be taking part in various events around the session, including at the beginning of September with the climate dialogue. So thank you so much for the organizers for mentioning those events. And I remain at your disposal should you have any questions on the Special Rapporteur's participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Frédéric. So before I come back to the room, I would like first to give the floor to Madeleine Hamel, who is organizing an event actually with the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Climate Change in parallel to the Council. So Madeleine, I'll be moving you to the stage and I'll let you briefly introduce yourself and the event that you're organizing.
Yeah, hi everyone. Actually, Frédéric mentioned that the Special Rapporteur Elisa Mogera would be in Geneva at the end of September. I'm Madeleine Hamel. I work for UNUCPR, UN University here in Geneva. And one of those events would be during the UNEC Sustainable Energy Week, which happens in parallel of the HRC60 session. So we're organizing a side event with the Special Rapporteur for her to present her report on defossilization to a new audience, maybe more tailored to labor, trade, and energy efficiency audiences. But I think it's important to mention for these audiences as well, because it will be in the Palais on October 1st from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. So, if you're around, I think it might be a good occasion to hear a bit more about this report, which was presented during the previous session, but it's going to be put in perspective with other types of, sectorial information. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person I have here in my list is Vera Fuchs from the Permanent Mission of Austria, who would like to introduce something important that is also happening the week after the Council. So Vera, I'm now moving you to the stage and giving you the floor.
Can I still say good morning at 11? Yeah, let's pretend. My name is Vera Fuchs. I'm part of the Austrian human rights team here in Geneva. And I thought some of you may not be aware of a meeting that is taking place on 13th and 14th of October, right after the council, basically. It's the Forum on Human Rights, Democracy and the Rule of Law. And this time it will focus on climate change. So the topic is Democracy and Climate Change, focusing on solutions. There will be 5 panels. It's open to intergovernmental and regional organizations, human rights institutions, academics, NGOs, and registration is open till 9 October. Just to flag for you, since this usually is a different crowd that follows that meeting. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vera, for the update. So that makes us very busy from the first week of September to the second week of October. I'm looking at the table to see if somebody wants to add. UNDP, you're not planning anything that we hear. Nobody wants to take the floor. So I think it's time we turn to our colleague, Arve, to complete the presentation of what is on the website and that can be useful for this community before we close the event. Arve, you have the floor.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Diana. And as much has already been said, there is still more to go for this session of the Council. What I will do today is to give you a brief overview of how the website, the page is going to be organized. This time around, similar to HRC59, we will have the key highlights that will provide you key details on what will happen. Hand side of the website, which should provide you the different topics that will be tackled in this session of the Council. Much has already been said on the key reports that will be identified here, but there are others. Ben mentioned already the Secretary General Synthesis Report on Just Transition and Human Rights. But the expert mechanism on the right to development are also presenting thematic studies that will tackle climate change. First of all, there's the climate justice, sustainability, and the right to development. as well as the operationalizing the right to develop and international development cooperation, which will explore normative frameworks of the right to development, on how these can be operationalized in different forms of development cooperation practices, including climate financing. Next, the rights of Indigenous peoples are also going to be highlighted in this session. It has already been mentioned that the annual half-day panel discussion on the rights of Indigenous peoples will focus on just transition to sustainable energy systems, including in relation to critical minerals. The Special Rapporteur on the rights of Indigenous peoples will also present his report on the theme Recognition of Indigenous Peoples. Other themes that are going to be addressed here is that the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Cambodia will be focusing on the link between natural resources and human rights in Cambodia from the angle of right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Sorry, that was a repeat, but the Human Rights Council Advisory Committee will be presenting the report on the full life cycle of new and emerging technologies in the military domain, wherein they highlighted that as these technologies evolve, addressing their environmental and human rights impacts will be essential. Another biennial panel discussion will take place this session on the unilateral coercive measures and overcompliance on the right to food and food security. Next, the independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order will present his report on major geopolitical trends and structural drivers of the North-South divide. And the report has identified the nexus of climate injustice, environmental degradation, and the depletion of natural resources, as well as the interplay of debt and climate crises as some of such trends and drivers. The UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances will also present its thematic study to the Council on enforced disappearances in the context of the defense of land, environment, and natural resources. Finally, as Sibyl has mentioned, the Working Group on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas will also be presenting the report to the Council. You will find all these reports in our page listed over here, as well as other reports that will be related to the environmental agenda. You'll find here as well the different resolutions and decisions, as well as various calls for submissions for future Human Rights Council that are related to the environmental agenda that will be posted here. For those events that will have videos and highlights, please kindly send us your details, and then we will be highlighting here the various videos that will be presented at the that will be happening at the Human Rights Council. And as usual, the various links and resources are available here, as well as from other colleagues from different organizations who provide updates as well on HRC60. Finally, as mentioned, if you wish to share information on your event, and if you wish to be featured on our page, you may find the information on the event today. Thank you, and I'll hand back to Diana the floor.
Thank you very much, Harvey. I think 60 minutes is not enough anymore to go through what's happening related to the environment at the sessions of the Council. So we might think about extending these sessions of at least 15 minutes for the next session. I would like to thank you all for being here, for all the work that most of you are doing that helps moving forward this agenda. We look forward to support those who are organizing various events, developing resolutions. We will actually be streaming some of the events that have been mentioned today, or we'll be supporting them. So looking forward to meet you then also on those occasions. Those who are here in person with us, please stay for informal discussions. There's coffee outside, apples in the room, and those who have joined online, see you in person at the session. Thank you very much.